So it's like there was nothing that was his only choice, but to try to make matters worse for us. But even then, the Lord didn't forsake us. He eventually, Moses was risen up, and he delivered us up out of there, man. This is the account of Haman, the Amalekite. You go back to the blue letter, right? Haman is an Amalekite, right? Edomite, the grandson. Amalek was the grandson of Esau. Let me see. This is Esther 3. Let me get this in the NLT. This is Esther 3 and 2. Salaki, I just hit it from 1. Point is in 9 though. Right? It says, sometime later, King Xerxes promoted Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite. The Agag was an Amalekite, over all the nobles, over all the other nobles, making him the most powerful official in the empire. All the king's officials would not bow before Haman to show him respect. Salakia. All the king's officials would bow before Haman to show him respect. Show to him respect whenever he passed. For so the king had commanded. But Mordecai, the Israelite, refused, the Jew, right? Refused to bow down to or show him respect. Right? Just having that austere, that strong spirit. Like, man, fuck this dude, man. This dude ain't shit. It says, the palace officials at the king's gate asked Mordecai, why are you disobeying the king's command? They spoke to him day after day, but still he refused to comply with the orders. So they spoke to Haman about this to see if he would tolerate Mordecai's conduct. They said, you just gonna let him treat you like that, bro? What you gonna do? Interrogating, antagonizing him, right? It says, where was we? Salakia. Since Mordecai had told them he was a Jew, when Haman saw that Mordecai would not bow down or show him respect, he was filled with rage. He had learned of Mordecai's nationality. He found out he was an Israelite, right? So he decided it was not enough to lay hands on Mordecai alone. Instead, he looked for a way to destroy all the Jews throughout the entire empire of Xerxes. Xerxes was the Persian king. If I'm not, correct me if I'm wrong. Right, so he didn't see fit that it was enough to just kill Mordecai. He wanted to get rid of all the Jews from this alleged hate he was receiving, because he just didn't respect him. Like, hey, who are you? Right, so verse 7. So in the month of April, during the 12th year of King Xerxes' reign, lots were cast in Haman's presence. The lots were called Purim, to determine the best day and month to take action. And the day selected was March 7th, near a year later. And we don't know how candid this is. The point is coming up. It says, now Haman approached King Xerxes and said, there is a certain race of people scattered through all the provinces of your empire who keep themselves separate from everyone else. Their laws are different from those of any other people, and they refuse to obey the laws of the king. So it is not in the king's interest to let them live. It is not in the king's interest to let them live. If it please the king, issue a decree that they be destroyed, and I will give 10,000 large sacks of silver to the government administrators to be deposited in the royal treasury. And we're just going to keep going. The king agreed, confirming his decision by removing his signet ring from his finger and giving it to Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, the enemy of the Jews. So now he's the enemy of the Jews. The king said, the money and the people are both yours to do with as you see fit. I want to get to the point. Salaki argue. These are rather short chapters. It's Esther 4 and 1. It says, when Mordecai learned about all that had been done, he tore his clothes, he put on burlap and ashes, and went out into the city crying with a loud, bitter wail. And he went as far as the gate of the palace, for no one was allowed to enter the palace gate while wearing clothes in mourning. And as news of the king's decree reached the provinces, there was a great mourning among the Jews. They fasted and wept and wailed, and many people lay in burlap and ashes. When Queen Esther's maids and eunuchs came and told her about Mordecai, she was deeply distressed. So she sent clothing to him and to replace the burlap, but he refused it. Then Esther sent for Hathach, one of the king's eunuchs who had been appointed as her attendant. She ordered him to go to Mordecai and find out what was troubling him and why he was in mourning. So Hathach went out to Mordecai in the square in front of the palace gate, and Mordecai told him the whole story, including the exact amount of money Haman had promised to pay into the royal treasury for the destruction of the Jews. Salakia. So clearly Mordecai and the Jews had favor, right? They had the queen's favor, okay? And of course, Mordecai, and this is for edification's sake, man. All right, it's verse 8. Mordecai gave Hathach a copy of the decree issued in the Susa that called for the death of all the Jews, and he asked Hathach to show it to Esther and explain the situation to her. He also asked Hathach to direct her to go to the king to beg for mercy and plead for her people. So he returned to Esther with Mordecai's message. Then Esther had told Hathach to go back to and relay his message to Mordecai. All the king's officials and even the people in the provinces know that anyone who appears before the king in his inner court without being invited is doomed to die unless the king holds out his golden scepter. And the king has not called for me to come to him for 30 days. So Hathach gave Esther's message to Mordecai. Mordecai sent this reply to Esther. Don't think for a moment that because you're in the palace you will escape when all the other Jews are killed. If you keep quiet at a time like this, deliverance and relief for the Jews will arise from some other place, but you and your relatives will die. Who knows if perhaps you were made queen for just such a time as this? Then Esther sent this reply to Mordecai. Go and gather together all the Jews of Susa and fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days, day or night. My maids and I will do the same. And then, though it is against the law, I will go in to see the king. If I must die, I must die. So she had faith, man. So Mordecai went away and did everything as Esther had ordered him. And Salakia, I didn't even, Spirit led me. I didn't realize I was going to get into this whole story, But, it's this, we're not going to quench the Spirit. We got the point coming up. It says, on the third day of the fast, Esther put on her royal robes and entered into the inner court of the palace just across from the king's hall. The king was sitting on his royal throne facing the entrance. And when he saw Queen Esther standing there in the inner court, he welcomed her and held out the golden scepter to her. So Esther approached and touched the end of the scepter. The king asked, what do you want, Queen Esther? What is your request? I will give it to you, even if it is half the kingdom. And Esther replied, if it please the king, let the king and Haman come today to a banquet I have prepared for the king. The king turned to his attendants and said, tell Haman to come quickly to a banquet as Esther has requested. So the king and Haman went to Esther's banquet, and while they were drinking wine, the king said to Esther, now tell me what you really want. What is your request? I will give it to you, even if it is half of the kingdom. So Queen Esther also, she had the king's favor, right? And Salakia. Continuing in 6, it says, verse 7, Salakia, Esther replied, this is my request and deepest wish. If I have found favor with the king, if it pleases the king to grant my request and do what I ask, please come with Haman tomorrow to the banquet I will prepare for you. Then I will explain what this is all about. And Haman was a happy man as he left the banquet. But when he saw Mordecai sitting at the palace gate, not standing up or trembling nervously before him, Haman became furious. However, he restrained himself and went home. Then Haman gathered together his friends and Zeresh, his wife, and boasted to them about his great wealth and his many children. He bragged about the honors the king had given him and how he had been promoted over all the other nobles and officials. So you peep game, like he knew he couldn't make a move in public on Mordecai because he seen he was sitting with the officials, man, and went home to brag, you know, to boast his little pride. Let's continue reading and get to the point. Salakia. But then he added verse 13, but this is all worth nothing as long as I see Mordecai the Jew just sitting there at the palace gate. So Haman's wife Zeresh and all her friends suggested, set up a sharpened pole that stands 70 feet, 75 feet tall, and in the morning ask the king to impale Mordecai on it. And when this is done, you can go on your merry way to the banquet with the king. This pleased Haman, and he ordered the people to set the pole up. So Lord put the spirit, basically to put the spirit on his wife Zeresh, to line him up. Like, you know, she didn't even know that what she was doing, because Mordecai had favor from Queen Esther, and Queen Esther had favor from the king. All right, this is the point. We're just going to keep rolling. Salaki, Aki. It's edification's sake. Right, it says, verse 1, that night the king had trouble sleeping, so he ordered an attendant to bring the book of the history of his reign so it could be read to him. In those records, he discovered an account on how Mordecai had exposed the plot